Today we talk about TENET, which happens to be spelled tenant backwards. Let's get to it. All right, TENET, the brain buster of 2020. Christopher Nolan is loved and adored all over the world for his Inception and his Batmans, which leaves me wondering what happened to TENET. Now, let me say this first. I think TENET has its strengths and it has its weaknesses. So the first element of drama is plot. Now, the plot of TENET is very typical of a Christopher Nolan movie. You go forward and then backward and then forward and then backward and forward and backward and forward and then backward and then forward again. It's very, very confusing. So the plot is very much kind of a time heist.
Well, to do what I do, I need some idea of the threat we face.
As I understand it, we're trying to prevent World War III.
Nuclear holocaust.
No. Something worse.
No, not a Marvel time heist, but Christopher Nolan time heist, where everything moves backwards after it goes through a machine. So ultimately, this guy is trying to save the world, which is very confusing because sometimes the dialogue is hard to hear. Let me get to that later. I just have a feeling there's a lot more going on in the plot than I realize. It's very tough for me to give this a score because I'm not exactly sure what's going on with the plot. I'm sure there's a lot of Nolanites out there that love the movie, that understand all of the plot. I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5. Half a star less just because I can't understand it really that well. The second element of drama is, of course, characters. Now, the characters is what's the weak point of this movie. I am personally a super fan of Inception. Inception is an awesome movie, and there's some good characterization on it. Now, in this movie, the characters are not dynamic and they're not round. They are, what you see is what you get. Like, they don't change. They don't have intense backstories. You don't even know the main guy's first name. He just calls himself the protagonist. And besides that, you don't really understand any of the other people's names because artistic decisions. So I'm going to give character a 1 out of 5 star. The next element of drama is theme. The theme of this movie, kill the bad guys? I don't know. It's just not put together in a way that's meant to really portray a good, like a specific idea, because they're dealing with so much with the spectacle. More on that later. So I'm going to give the theme a 1 out of 5 star. All right, on to the next element, which is dialogue. As I mentioned before, for artistic reasons, the dialogue has been suppressed and the other sounds amplified, which makes it really difficult to understand what is going on. With the dialogue, people are trying to explain stuff, but you can't hear what they're saying.
From the terminal? From their private planes, of course. Our logistics department.
And that was an artistic decision that they decided to go with. I do not agree with it because I'd like people to understand what's going on in a movie. So I'm going to give the dialogue a 2 out of 5 star. The next element of drama is music and rhythm. Now, the music and rhythm is, of course, the music that's played in the background and also the pacing of it all. Now, they had some interesting things with the music, I have to say, because half of the time the music is going backwards, and the rest of the time it's going forwards. So there's this interesting warp with music where when you're going backwards in time, you have that kind of that whoop, whoop, whoop thing going on that is, it's giving the illusion of everything going backwards, which I think is pretty awesome. I think that's quite revolutionary. I mean, it may not be the most fun to listen to. My mom personally did not like that that style of music, what they did with that. So it's not for everybody, but I think it was an interesting choice. I really appreciated that, because watching it was like, oh, hold on, they're going backwards. The music itself is going backwards. I'm going to give this a 4.5 out of 5 star. Now, the last element of drama is, of course, spectacle. And we love spectacle, don't we? Now, spectacle in this movie has a lot to do with the things going forward and backward in time. And it's quite interesting. It is very interesting. It's very integral to the story. Not to say that it's not confusing, because it is very confusing at times, because you're wondering, wait, how did the bullet that he fired go through the machine if it was destroyed when it was going backwards? So what? I don't understand how something that can be destroyed when it went through backward in time. It just seems very odd to me. It doesn't make sense. The science, maybe, okay, it's science fiction. I get it. That I'm still catching up on that. So if somebody can explain it more to a 12-year-old, I could be able to understand it probably. Now, before I leave, remember, this movie is about time travel. And it's basically reversing. So you got to make it through at least the first hour. You have to make it past the full hour of it not making sense, and then the last half starts making more sense. So keep that in mind when watching it. Don't give up halfway through, because you will be very confused. Now, remember, it's not what you watch, but how you watch it that makes you a scholar.